Alright, so this project, we're going to step it up as far as difficulty. I mean, it's not that difficult, but relative to what we've been doing, basically we're going to create an Ajax-powered Shoutbox. Okay, it's going to use jQuery and Ajax. And Ajax allows us to basically update or change content on our website without reloading the page. Alright, and what we're going to do here is we just have a couple fields here, one for the person's name, one for the shout text, and we're going to submit that using a GET request, a POST request to add it to a database. Okay, we're going to be working a little with PHP and MySQL. Okay, and you can see if I go ahead and put my name in Brad, it'll say hello, and you can see it just pops up here. Alright, and we also have the time. Alright, so in order to do this, you can't just build it on your local file system. You either have to have a web server or you need to download something like XAMPP, which is what I'm using. Alright, so if you go to apachefriends.org, it's very simple. XAMPP is basically an Apache server that runs on your local machine, and it gives you MySQL, it gives you PHP, Perl, and some other things. Alright, so it's very easy to install. You just want to download it, click on the button. If you have Windows, Mac, or Linux, install it, and after you're done installing it, it'll run the control panel, alright, which looks like, let me see. Okay, XAMPP control panel, so it'll look like something like this. And what you want to do is you just want to make sure that Apache and MySQL are both running. Alright, you can install them as services if you want by clicking the checkbox, if you want them to basically run in the background, but you don't need to for this. Alright, so make sure they're both started, and then if you go to your C drive or whatever your main drive is, and then go to XAMPP and then htdocs. Okay, this is basically your web server. Alright, so we have let's say we create a folder. Actually, we have one called test. Alright, and we even have an index page in there. Actually, let me just change this. Alright, so basically it's just a simple function that says hello again to the browser. So to access that, we can go to our browser and we can go to localhost/test. And there it is. Okay, it's a index.php file. Alright, so most of you probably already know all about this, but just for those of you that don't. So basically what I'm saying is we need to build our project in the htdocs folder. Alright, I have a folder called JS Shout, which is the demo I just showed you. You can see it's at localhost/JS Shout. What I'm going to do is create a new folder in here, and I'm going to call it JS Shoutbox, and this is where we're going to build it. Alright, so we want to create not an index.html but an index.php file. Alright, now we also need to connect to our MySQL database. Alright, so we're going to build that. We're going to put together the database in the next video. Actually, we might have time to do it in this video, but basically we need a file to connect to the database. Alright, so we're going to create one called database.php. Alright, next we need a PHP file to actually take our POST requests and take the information in our form and submit it to the database. So we're going to create another PHP file, and I'm just going to call this shoutbox.php. Alright, now we can create our folders. So we'll have a CSS folder. Okay, we'll have a JS folder. And we're not using any images, so we don't need to create an image folder. So basically that's the structure. And we might as well create the database now. Now if you have XAMPP installed, you want to use the tool called PHP MyAdmin. which allows us to easily create databases and tables and columns and all that stuff. So after you install XAMPP, you want to go to localhost/phpMyAdmin. And if you're on a web server, if you're using cPanel, chances are you have this already. So just go to that. And basically we're going to click on databases and create a new database. I'm going to call it JS Shoutbox. Okay, and then I'm going to click on that. And we're only going to have one table. Okay, we're going to have one table called Shouts. Very, very simple. And I believe we have 4 columns. Alright, so we're going to need a few things. We need an ID. Okay, so the ID is going to be unique. The type is going to be integer, which is just a number. The length of it, you can leave it blank, but I usually like to put 11 for the max length for my integers. And then scroll over here, and for index we're going to choose primary because this is going to be a primary key field. And then we also want to click this AI, which is auto increment. Okay, so auto increment means that it'll add 1 every time a row is inserted. So every shout that someone makes, it's going to create a new row, and the ID will be, let's say the last one was 2, then this one would be 3, and then 4, and so on. Alright, so we also want the person's name, and that's going to be a varchar, which is basically any kind of character. And the max length for this, I'm going to say 50. Alright, I don't think anyone has a name that's longer than 50. Alright, so the next one is going to be the shout, which is just the text they type in. That will also be via varchar, and I'm going to make the max on this 300. Finally, we want the date, which is basically going to be the time, the way we format it. And we're not going to use an actual date field here, just because I want it formatted a different way. So we're just going to use text for this. Alright, so text, and we don't need a length or anything like that. Alright, so that's it for our table. Let's go ahead and click save. Okay, so now we have our empty table. So now that we have that done, what I want to do is just create the basic index page. Okay, just the HTML for now, and then we'll do the CSS later. Alright, so we want to go to localhost JS Shoutbox, or whatever you named your folder. Alright, so right now it's looking at the index.php file. So let's just do a little test here and say hello and save. Alright, so it's working good. I want to just close all these. Okay, so this is going to be formatted just like an HTML file, so we're going to give it a doc type. Oops. Yeah, doc type HTML. Okay, we'll have a head. Oops. What is going on? Sorry about that. Head, and we'll have a title. And we'll just call it JS Shoutbox. And we want to link the style sheet. Style sheet. And href is going to be css/style.css. Alright, and the JavaScript. We need to include jQuery, so I'm going to paste in the Google CDN. And then include our own script. Okay. So that's it for the head. Now we need the body. Alright, so in the body we're going to wrap everything in a container. Alright, and we'll have a header. The header will hold an H1. and this is just going to say JS Shoutbox. Alright, and that's all we need in the header. Next we'll create a div with the ID of shouts. Okay, and in here we're going to have an unordered list to represent our shouts. Alright, so we'll have LIs. Actually, we're only going to have one LI because what we're going to do is run a loop. We're going to use PHP and run a loop to fetch the shouts from the database and then output them. So right now I'm just going to leave this blank. Alright, so after the shouts div, we'll have a footer. Alright, and the footer is where the form will go. Alright, so we want to say form. Okay, we'll have a label for name. Alright, and then the input, I'm going to say input type is going to be text, and we're going to give it an ID so we can grab onto it in jQuery. And then another label, which will be shout text. Okay, shout text, then we need another input with the type of text, and we'll give that an ID of shout. Okay, and then finally we need a submit button. So input type is going to be submit, and we're also going to give it an ID of submit, and we'll give it a value of shout. Okay, so that should do it for the HTML. Let's check it out. Okay, not very pretty, but it's semantic. Alright, so that's the HTML. We might as well do the CSS. We got some time left in the video. So let's open up, where are we? JS Shoutbox, CSS. Okay, we need to create our style sheet. And we might as well create our script file as well. Alright, so let's open the style sheet and let's go ahead and zero everything out. Okay, so the body, font family, just go ahead and use Arial. Background will be black, and the text, of course, will be white, and the font size will be 14 pixels. Okay, now the container. For the container, we're going to give it a width of 700 pixels and a margin. We're going to push it down a little, so 40 pixels, and then the sides we want equal sides, so auto, and overflow will be auto, and let's give it a border of gray, light gray, 1 pixel, solid. Okay, the header, we'll have a background of dark gray and padding 10 pixels, and then we want to align it to the center. Alright, so let's take a look at this so far. Okay. Now the shouts. Okay, we had an ID of shouts, and we're going to give this a height of 200 pixels, give it a border of dark gray, 1 pixel solid, and give it a margin. Let's do 30 pixels, and padding, we'll do 15 pixels. Okay, so that's the shout div itself. Now let's do the list items in the shouts div. Okay, just want to list style none, and let's give them a line height of 1.7. Okay, now the footer. Say padding 10 pixels. Background would be a dark gray. And we want to align it to the center. Alright. Okay, so now we just need to do these input fields, make them a little bigger. What's that quote? Where is it? We have some quote here. Just trying to find that. Shout text. Alright, right here. Alright, so we want to style first the name input. So we can say input with the ID of name, and actually we want to do this for both fields. So input with the ID of shout. Okay, we're going to add some padding, we'll say 3 pixels, and then we're going to add a height of 15 pixels. Okay, now we want to do the name itself, so input ID name, and we're going to set the name to 130 pixels wide and set a margin right of 20 pixels. Alright, so now let's grab the shout input, and we're going to make that wider. So the width for this is going to be 270 pixels. And then finally we have the button. So input with the ID of submit, add padding, let's say 5 and 10, border 0, background will be a darker gray, color will be white of the text, and we want to set the cursor to a pointer. Okay, so that should do it. There we go. So we have the HTML and the CSS done. In the next video we're going to work with PHP, and we're going to connect to the database.